Welcome to Rock Talk, everybody. We're here at the Octane Media Plymouth Rock TV studios at the Kingston Collection, and setting the space has allowed us to have this great set. So we invite our favorite people to come in, our entrepreneurs, our celebrities, our athletes, and we just like to have conversations with them in our setting the space here. And we got a guy who's just maybe a par 10 away from here, if I were to create a golf analogy, and just right over the hill and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. Mike Byrnes, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I didn't check any of those boxes.
No.
Athlete or celebrity or anything, so I'm honored that you still have me.
Well, you are a baseball expert, coach,
ex-player,
for what, the Dominican Republic?
Yeah, right.
Or more of the local nine.
Well, I was saying we have a heat wave, and I'm coaching tonight, and it's going to be a hot one. So
well,
just coaching will be hot.
I remember being a kid. Not to say that it's the old man kind of thing like when I was a kid,
right?
But I would be in that catcher's gear, and it was I think 200 degrees out, and it is hot today, and so
kid at third base burst into flames.
Right, no joke. So you're a business consultant,
correct?
Right, I knew that because that's why we were working together. We were kind of talking about our experiences of working with different industries, and you work primarily with the financial world. Tell me a little bit about Mike Byrnes Consulting and what you do.
Yeah, Byrnes Consulting, I started it in 2008. I help businesses grow, but mostly financial advisors. On the pro bono side, I'll help nonprofits. I do it actually through a group called Empower Success Corps. And I volunteer a little bit here and there outside of Empower Success Corps.
How did you start? I should actually go back a little bit further than that, because in order to be consultant, what was your training or your background or your education?
When you talk to entrepreneurs, it's pretty funny. Someone always gets pushed out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
For me, I actually worked for a really big, well-known company, financial services, and we used to bring in these crazy expensive consultants, and they would interview us all, and then they would regurgitate it in a presentation to the EVP and the executive vice president. Like, this is gold. I'm like, I've been telling you this for 6 months. Like, what are you talking about?
Right, yeah.
So the little light bulb went off then. I was like, I could do this. And then, something pushes you out of your comfort zone. That company had moved us from Massachusetts to Rhode Island. And at the time, I didn't want to make that move. So I took a leap of faith. The short version is I started Byrnes Consulting. Yeah.
And did you have enough clients at the beginning to make that jumping out of your comfort zone a little bit more comfortable, or did you start with nothing?
I started with nothing. It was a totally rolling the dice. Did I ever tell you the story of my first prospect that called me?
I don't think so. No.
So I used to write for a local magazine because I had give advice on PR too. And the first person that called said, I loved your articles. You're exactly talking my language. You'd be perfect for me. I want to hire you. I didn't even tell him what my services were, what I charged. And he says, I have a unique demographic that I serve. And I said, really? Like, what's your target market? And he goes, I defend pedophiles. And I'm like, no, like my first lead. I'm like, I was at a crossroads early. I obviously didn't take him as a client. But it's hard when you don't have money coming in to not accept that first phone call.
Well, it's those ethical lines, and you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, we talk about that, often when we have conversations, and there's that level that even at that time, you probably were going down the whole First Amendment Constitution, this guy has a right to do what he does, everybody deserves their chance to defend themselves, and especially people who were accused of that if they didn't do it, like they need Jesus in that courtroom with them, But it's still got to be like, if I take this is it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna. You're gonna get a letter of recommendation from that to get your next client to represent Osama bin Laden or something.
Well, that's the thing too. When you take that first step, it takes you down a path.
Right.
And so I could have loved the extra revenue right off the bat, but yeah. So I didn't go that route. I actually gravitated to financial advisors because they're smart people. I like that, but they know how to delegate. Like they know they get in over their skis on certain things. So they'll admit like, hey, I need to delegate this and I need to get an outside expert. It's not to say they can't do it, but they're really good at the financial planning or the investment management. They're not maybe so great at the business planning part, or they just don't have time, right? So,
Well, I think with any business too, you're focused on, or at least your focus should be on, how am I going to make the most in this hour? And that's probably not chasing down leads or going to a senior center table and just standing there all day waiting for somebody to walk up to you. You want to delegate that work so your day is maximized for revenue. Right. Yeah.
Right.
So you deal with financial advisors almost exclusively, or you do a little
Yeah, I
bit
mean,
of
I'll make an exception to the rule every once in a while. I like to have the target market because it's easy, right? We're big Brady fans, right?
Right.
I remember one time he said that, why would I retire? Like, I know every single thing the defense could throw at me. So so I kind of think of that way. Like, as a consultant, I've seen almost everything. But with AI and other things, the world is evolving pretty quickly. So it's nice to be in that target market, but to answer your question, I'll drift every once in a while.
And it's interesting you bring up Brady, because even him at his top of his game, probably to his last game he ever played, had a coach and somebody who was there to help him and guide him and point things out from a outsider's perspective to look at and say, here's where you need to make some adjustments, so you don't know in the heat, which is probably what a lot of financial advisors who are in the midst of it and the muck and the mire of their crazy business maybe don't see things that you can see.
Right. And it's, the person that thinks they know everything and has all the answers, I don't want to work with them, right? And they're the ones that are not going to succeed.
That was me at 25.
Yeah, and all of us go through some stage where we realize this isn't, I think there's all kinds of famous quotes on this. I should have one off the top of my head, but once you realize how little you really know, then you become wiser.
That's wisdom, right? Yeah. It's when you realize that there's just so much to this life that we'll never know. Is great knowledge. Which is weird, isn't it?
And I'm not saying every consultant's the best in the world. And not even myself. I'm not tooting my horn, but I have seen consultants give really bad advice before.
Oh yeah.
And companies have done the wrong thing, and they've had to recover down the road. But
so what percentage of what you do you consider it to be X's and O's or psychology? Or are you working with an individual and breaking down maybe some emotional things that they have to deal? Do you do any of that, is my question?
It's really funny because unfortunately divorce happens in marriages. Well, I work with tons of partners and they fall apart too, right? And so sometimes a little of that is involved. Actually, with registered investment advisors, they go independent. They are so successful, a lot of times they bring their family in. So whether it's a husband and wife or a next generation, up or down, sometimes they bring in the father to help or mother. Sometimes the grandkids. It could be, if it's really successful and been around, it could be great grandkids.
Wow, yeah.
So I will tell you that they fight at a different level. So if you are a family member, you realize you can battle it out, and you're still family the next day. But coworkers can't fight like that.
Right, yeah.
So sometimes I get brought in just to help with the culture of a firm, because those two are going crazy every night in the office, and that spreads, right? So
do you meet with, when you typically start with somebody, are you at a point where they're at a B+ and they're looking to be an A, or are they bar rescue an F, the Board of Health is going to shut them down, my analogy.
Yeah.
And they're just this is our last straw. How would you say you best slide onto the roller coaster of their little operation?
Yeah, I'll work with any different person. Obviously, helping pay for retainer kind of weeds out the person that's going out of business. I don't get a lot of that. I do get some people that have a crisis that they need to get over. I do get people that, if they go independent, they're creating their own brand.
Yep.
And so they don't have the revenue coming in, so they will get there. But a lot of them are already successful. They just want to compound on that success.
Yep.
And think about it, if somebody, an outsider, comes in and can get you there faster, it's totally a great ROI to do that, rather than kind of stumble around and pinball. You eventually get to where you want to go, but you're bouncing around. If you can take that straight line and get there faster, it's well worth it.
Walk me through the first call. The first time you ever meet, because I would guess you get referred a lot, because you do help people a lot, and there's a lot of good energy about you out there. And so people will obviously say, you got to check this guy out, mainly because maybe another person's firm people start to notice the difference. Like, I guess if I showed up and I'm like lean and mean, people say, boy, you look like you're in shape. And I would say, well, you got to meet my trainer, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And, he helped make this into, and that's true. This is all his work.
That's not AI.
So for somebody like yourself, walk me through that first introduction, that first meeting.
So I don't sell myself. I'm probably bad at that. The way that I sell myself is I give advice, and they're like, wow, we really want to work with that Byrnes guy.
But do you ever, and I don't want to interrupt, and I did, but do you ever worry that you're giving stuff away for free when you're giving that advice?
100% giving it away. But they'll realize it's just the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot more to it. So what I do is I really will never trust a consultant that just gives you advice but that doesn't listen. So that's the hard part of that first meeting. Like, I need to listen to at least 15 minutes, a whole bunch of questions. I like when growth is a topic, because if I can quickly give them advice to grow, then they'll know that they're going to get a positive ROI in the engagement. And that, I always say, like, it's a partnership. Like, we both got to get something out of this to make it work.
Right.
But yeah, in that first meeting, in like 15 minutes, the more I could look under the hood. Like, I'm not a mechanic. I would be terrible looking at a car, but a business, I can look really quickly and see, where do they need help, and go from there. Under the growth category, so client referrals are a big piece of that. Strategic alliances are another big piece. And then a third category is all marketing and sales where you don't have a lead source. And then the fourth category of growth is inorganic growth. So if you want to look at a way to acquire a business or tuck in a business, that could get you there quicker. It's going to cost more, obviously. And then there's all kinds of other things, like if growth is the category, like, how can you become more profitable, more operationally efficient? Do you have the right human capital structure to get you where, like, people will say, like, we want to hire you because we want to double our size in 5 years. I'm like, well, you're going to look a lot different. Are you ready for that? Because eventually there's some bottleneck, usually with the owner or the founder, that they have so much control over so many things that they need to learn how to delegate to get to be that size.
Wow.
But yeah, and that's the thing, like, you've probably seen successful businesses too, like, they had to let go of stuff they thought was their core competency to get where they wanted to go.
Well, anytime you start, you probably don't start with Tom Brady didn't have that high-level quarterbacks coach when he was playing Pop Warner. So you reach a certain level of success where somebody does come in and disrupts your routine, because it's going to require delegation of work, and you shouldn't be doing this. And that can drive an entrepreneur mad, because they're just so used to doing it themselves. And that's got to be probably a big hurdle to overcome, I would guess.
Yeah, and I would say that is my strength. It's like, I didn't come in to be the guy that tells them what to do. My strength is I set the seed, teach them everything I know. I'm actually more successful if I make them think is their idea. And then they're off to the races. I do need to get
a check, though.
I need to get a little bit of credit, right?
Yeah,
So like I just had one client. She's wonderful. I know she wouldn't care if I gave this example, but she lost a prospect. And so in a half an hour conversation, I gave her some tips, and she won that prospect. Our consulting engagement is now paid forever. Like, the revenue that she will make from that client, as long as he doesn't die or leave her, right? Like, he's paid for the consulting, so everything else is gravy, right?
Right.
So that's kind of nice when you have that kind of quick win. I'm always trying to prove my worth, obviously, but yeah, that's kind of the fun of it.
And so a lot of the financial firms, because there's got to be differences in the levels, right? You get mid-range, maybe 3 or 4 advisors in a firm, and they have X amount under management, what have you. But they're marketing themselves maybe differently than, say, some real exclusive Greenwich, Connecticut firm that you don't see commercials on, you don't see ads for. It's almost like you got to know somebody to know somebody to know somebody to get in, and that very exclusivity probably gets them the work. Does an individual sort of work with you one-on-one, or do you sit with the team every week? I've been in places where I've had partners, and probably the biggest need was working out the partnerships and understanding what each, it's like couples counseling, that kind of thing. You're working with the whole firm, so would you sit down with the whole receptionists, the assistants, the interns? Like, would you be doing that too, or is it just with the head advisors or the founders or something? Honestly,
that's when I can be the most successful, when I get to interact with everybody. I will sometimes get called in by an individual person that says, I just need help in my little silo. But I uncover all these things all the time that need to be improved. And if they can't make the decision, because the owner or the management level has to make that decision, that's where I get my hands tied, right? I can only do so much. But But yeah, it's nice when I can get in and improve the whole culture, the whole. I'll give you an example. This is like a really simple one. Most businesses want to grow through client referrals. So one of the things would be like, how do you have the conversation? And then do you track it in your CRM, your contact management system, whatever you want to call it? And just that little simple checkbox that after the meeting, they have to say, did they have the conversation? That little change will make a drastic improvement in client referrals because most people don't have the conversation, right? Yeah, obviously you got to teach them how to do it, so it's not like all about me. It's like you're offering help. I could do a whole hour on that, but when you do that, when you kind of get into the whole culture and can spread things all across from best practices to compensation, tracking, reward systems like that are like. Sometimes it doesn't have to be in their paycheck. Sometimes you just need to give them recognition because they did the right thing and other people will follow.
So Mike, we both do a lot with all different types of people, and that's to say it as nicely as possible. There's all kinds out there. Yeah. And this day and age, there's some, with the internet out there, you just about can see it all. Let me ask you, what have you seen? What was the wackiest thing you ever came across and where you were like, okay, this is going to be some easy money because you can pretty much identify what the nuttiness is. Tell me I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, like the next generation part is interesting because if that kid has like the silver spoon type of mentality.
Like Horrible Bosses, do you ever see that movie? Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Where Donald Sutherland dies and the son is the Irish actor there. And he's just a cokehead. He's taking over the business. But I just watched that scene last night, and I'm going, that sounds like an absolute nightmare for. But go ahead.
That might be an extreme, but but no, I have seen crazy things. Like they just don't think they can do any wrong, right? Because their father or their mother is in charge, and they have all the answers. They probably didn't have to work their whole life. They went to grad school and all that stuff, and they come in and they think they know the whole business. And that creates a whole cultural issue. But like then you start to see like they're using F-bombs on their social media, or they're like ranting and raving one way on the political side when your clients could be both. Just all kinds of things where they just don't get it. Getting loaded at company events where they have their clients there. I've seen all kinds of stuff. So sometimes I get called in to clean up that mess because it makes more sense to bring in a bad person to help with it. I'm not like another movie like Office Space.
Oh,
they're bringing the consultants to let people go. I hope I don't ever have to play that role, but like I do like have to like say, hey, this person's underperforming. Can you fix it? If they can't, then I can work with them to get them to where they need to go.
You're like Ray Donovan. He was like a fixer. You get called.
I always saw a couple of those, but
they say you got to you get your lime in your body bag and you got to go like, clean up a mess or something like that. I'm sure there's all sorts of things that can happen out there, and obviously your day-to-day isn't the extremes of it, but let's just say partner passes away or something like that, and it's pretty sudden, and there's probably a lot of like, what do we do here? And nobody has a transition plan because the guy was 50 or something like that. There's a million things that sort of an outside consultant like yourself can sort of work through. I'm not even saying that's what you do. I'm almost trying to envision all the possibilities of all the scenarios of ways that somebody could connect with you. Business is like a family, and everything crazy happens to your family. And sometimes if you don't prepare or have a contingency plan, you're in trouble.
Yeah, so in our industry, we call it a succession plan. Like, so you have that mapped out, and a lot of them don't have it. There's a whole graying in the industry, and they don't have that plan mapped out. So there's all kinds of scenarios. If they're going to try to sell to a younger advisor, the one thing that I always say, I wrote a lot of articles on this before, and I realized I was kind of saying the same thing that other consultants were saying, which was, what happens if you die tomorrow? So I changed it to, you just died. Does anyone know how to open the office tomorrow? Does anyone know how to get those files? Like, you get hit by the proverbial bus, right? What do you do if that happens? Like, are they trained? You've done a huge disservice to the people that are going to take over, to your clients. They need to be treated well, but also your heirs, right?
Yeah.
Or your spouse. Like, a grieving spouse does not want to come into a business that he or she knows nothing about, has to like clean up the mess while they're like so sad and heartbroken, right? Like that's bad planning, and it's not right. So you can have the long-term succession plan. We should also have a continuity agreement. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but in the short term, if you don't have that long-term plan worked out, here's what would happen if I did die.
Wow, yeah, it's incredible. And The landscaper on your street might have the worst yard. The estate planning attorney's office might have the worst succession plan because they just do it all day and they never think to do it themselves.
Cobbler's kids have no shoes or something like that. Is that the saying?
Yeah, exactly. I think that you brought up a great point in talking about websites and media. And I do think that there's a lot of opportunities for people to understand that when you go to an appointment and you dress a certain way, you don't wear a clown outfit one day and a knight's outfit the other and a Brooks Brothers suit the other. You're always putting out an air of consistency, and especially in the financial world where every little subconscious detail will stick out to a client. And I even say when somebody walks into your lobby, the decision can be made whether or not somebody does business with you. If there's an ashtray or something with cigarette butts, or your receptionist is wearing a ripped AC/DC shirt or something like that, right away they can be like, oh, I don't care what they say they can do, I just don't believe it. And so that lobby maybe gets transferred over to more of a digital lobby where it's your website and how you appear there and how much information you want to give about yourself is, I think, important, because it shouldn't be giving everything away, but you want to give enough away so people go, I think I like that guy, or he resonates with me, or I like what he does. And
you like, I feel like we've talked about this for hours, but you nailed it on the head. I like to bring up this term called zero moment of truth. So Google coined it years ago. The first moment of truth in the old days was you walked down the aisle and you experienced a product or service. I always say deodorant, and the person touched it, they could smell it, and that was the first impression of the thing. Now, because of online communications, the zero moment of truth is happening before anyone ever encounters the product or service. So they're not in your office, they're not sending you an email, they're not on the phone with you. They're actually making a decision whether they hire you before they ever meet you. So that zero moment is really important. So back when I said like everyone should have a really good website, a webutation is a marketing lingo. I've heard that. Like, what's your reputation on the web? Like that, people are going to make the decision. That maybe they come from a referral, but now the website gets the assist. Because if the more sophisticated the decision is, the more they're going to do research online.
Well, go to the Four Seasons website, or go to Gucci's website, or go to Louis Vuitton's website, or you're going to be able to tell exactly the similarities between all of them when you go there. And then you can go to a website that was done on a template through GoDaddy, and you're going to see the difference. And I've made websites that I thought, this is incredible, and then somebody looks at it and goes, oh, you did that yourself, I can see. And I'd be like, oh, well, thank you, but that's not the compliment I was, how you meant it, And I think that people, of course, you can't spend $100,000 on a website when you first open your door, but there are some things that you can do to make it pop and to make it speak volumes and to control how people's attention goes, and they're not drifting off and going down pages that guide them. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and like that's more of a product. So in the service side of things, usually it's a human relationship thing that sells the business. So I always say humans want to work with humans. If that's the case, your website should be very human oriented. Like your culture, your personality, like everything should show. Like, so we should do a whole segment where I sit there and interview you. But like that, those website videos, the first impression is a video like you do, right?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about. I'm going to ask you a question in a second. But like, so when you go there and you're trying to say, is this the right person? And they have 3 other names that they're going to consider. Make your website be so great that they don't go look at those other 2.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like, back to you, like how a welcoming video, how do you get that across?
Well, first off, I don't consider myself a production guy. As they say, I'm a storyteller, and I use the medium of video. Why? Well, it's obviously the best way technologically to capture all of the elements of the subject matter you're shooting. So when we shoot anything at its core, we're observing everything, and we're talking to everyone. We're asking questions about who you are and what you do, and we're trying to get into the core of that authenticity, that honesty. So hopefully the takeaway is a genuine knowledge of who you are and your team, and the benefit for a potential client who might be watching this at 3 a.m. right before an initial meeting with the firm the next day, and they just are reassured that they just have this subconscious feeling that it's the right choice. And I think you had mentioned before, let's say somebody is looking at 3 websites and they see yours first, or they see the video, the movie as we call it first, that they don't even go to website 2 and 3. ideally, that's what we want to do, blow them away with that. So we do our shoot. We gather as much as we can. It's pretty intense, a few days, right? And we take all of those elements from that visit, that production, and we do what we do best with our editing and our music and our pacing and our cuts and our angles and capturing just the right sound bites that we get from the interviews, because we are building the movie, if you will, about who you are. And think of movies. They elicit an emotion, a reaction. It can scare you, make you laugh, cry, inspire. So in the case of a financial advisor, because that's what we're talking about, who, let's face it, earns their business from an emotional connection, you need to tap into those fundamental values. And you can't do that from a two-dimensional website with text only. Imagine just say, we are honest and genuine, written down. No, you got to show it. And you're showing it in a way that's not obvious. It's sort of subtle.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
All right, so I got to reel you back. I got to get back to videos. So I'm a big believer you got to invest on that homepage video, because if you don't, if they get bored out of your first video, like they watch a third of it and go out, you might be lost that prospect, right? Like if they sit through the whole thing and they're entranced and they're like, this is everything that I want, everything from maybe a regional connection, maybe they see the people that look like experts, they demonstrate it, they get their brand personality across, and oh, by the way, like they're, when they start to demonstrate their expertise, they're talking to that target market that you're in. Like that's a home run. Like that's zero moment of truth. Like there's nothing better than that, right?
Yeah,
so,
of course, yep.
So you've seen, I'll flip the script on you. Like you've seen a lot of videos. What are some of the worst ones that are out there that people shouldn't be doing? That's
a good question. Because I think it's all relative. Some things might resonate with some people and not others. And but let me back up a little bit. I'm a big believer in trying a bunch of things to see what works and what doesn't. Trial and error. And using the concept of failing forward. So you might try something, it doesn't work, and you learn from that and do it better the next time. But when you're in a career like financial advising, time is money.
Right.
So maybe doing it right from the get-go makes the most sense. And me personally, when I do one of these things, I'm going to force thoughtfulness into the making of your story. So a bad video might be something done with a big budget but no thought or emotion behind it.
Yeah.
So what happened? Let's talk about something like that. You spent a ton of money on something you didn't create the result that you wanted, which was people deciding to do business with you. And now they're soured on media. They have less money because they spent all this money. And those big production houses that churn out these videos, they're like an emotionless machine, and they'll charge you like 25 grand. And so not everybody's like that, but it's sort of something that I see. And a lack of thoughtfulness. Yeah. Because I don't want this to sound like I'm just picking apart all the bad videos out there. But another thing that I can think of is that you mimic everybody else. You see another video of another firm and you just shot for shot remake that. And that, I think, that cookie cutter just makes you look the same as everybody else. And why do that? When you're trying to be that sunflower in the sea of roses, you want to be different. So something, and everybody is different by God's hand, right? We're all made uniquely in His image. So let's celebrate that. Let's use that, and that goes back to the thoughtfulness. But another thing I don't like about, and again, we're talking about financial advisors, but I do these things for entrepreneurs across all industries, is how they blather on about how smart they are and how much money they'll make you, and the public can smell that from a mile away.
Yeah, right.
And think about the connections that we make in life. They're from an alignment of values. So I can't make a firm look good if they're heartless, they have no integrity, emotionless. Well, maybe I can make them look good because that's what we do. But it won't be genuine, and it won't last the test of time, because there's a delicate dance in storytelling to show confidence but not cockiness, and to show success without bragging. Does that make sense? Oh, and one last thing. I'm just thinking of I don't want to be thinking of all the negative that's out there, but maybe this is more of an omission, less so on something bad, is that when a video doesn't include testimonials.
Yeah.
Now, if you're new and you don't have any clients yet, so a testimonial might be hard. I would also say maybe a video would be not the right step at this point. But let's just say, for the sake of this, that we're saying, for this example, why a testimonial is great. At least use your parents or your teachers or your scout leaders or anyone, your best man from your wedding, your friend. But I would say most of the advisors, even if you're new, have some clients who trusted you enough to do business. So they're willing to speak on your behalf. Ask them as a friend. They can speak about your character and they can talk about who you are as a person outside of the industry, because who we are outside of our business is also who we are inside of our business, if that makes sense. And so conversely, what does a video look like that has no one speaking about who you are other than you?
Yeah.
All right, so before we wrap things up too, because I think that one of the opportunities of doing this show, we've had all sorts of people, writers from Hollywood shows and athletes and all that kind of stuff. And generally speaking, when people come on, they are promoting something, or they're, this is my book, or come check out my movie, or whatever it would happen to be. I think in general, people like yourself want the phone to ring. And you want it to be that ideal client that you're like, this is the one I want for the rest of my life. Who would that be? Who do you think that would be? Like, what size office? What kind of issues are they going through right now? What would you identify as being the main target?
Yeah, I mean, I'll work with anyone. They just need to know that they need to improve. Like I coach baseball. If a kid thinks they know all the answers and they argue with on everything, I'm like, you're not going to get better, right? So that's a great quality to have. I really like people that don't have a business plan. I mean, because that's the one thing that I really insist. I'm pretty loose on where we go in the consulting engagements. They drive that, and I help them wherever I can. But I really love people that have a plan, because I've seen a wonderful correlation in success. If you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. I don't know. I forget who said it, but that might be a little extreme. You can still be successful without a business plan, but you'll get there faster. I think that I always say, like, the railroad was never just randomly, tracked out. Like, they knew where they wanted to go, and then they built the tracks to get there. So same thing, like, have an idea of what you want. I also would love, the thing I do in my prospect calls, I give a whole bunch of advice and tell them what I do, and then they maybe want to hire me. But I also ask them, like, why are you hiring a consultant? Like, know what you want to get out of this. And if you don't have that going in, then that conversation is going to be that much more effective for everybody.
Yeah, I think the idea of the railroad was a great example, because I would always say to people, I did this thing called the 3 keys to financial success, and it really was 3 keys to life success. And one of them was like the analogy of a navigation system. And what do you do when you have a navigation system? You turn it on, what's the first thing it does? It locates you, because it can't tell you where to go until it knows where you are. So in a case like what you do, you've got to find out, what's your culture like right now? Like, don't lie to me, tell me straight out, where are we today on this particular date, 2025? Then what it does is that you have to program in a destination, and it's going to take you there. But what happens if you're in the car with the kids and they got to pee, you pull off the exit, and what does it say? Rerouting, and recalculating, and you want to punch the thing in the face. And eventually it gets you there, but it also doesn't hold you accountable to actually get into that. You might want to change your destination. Get halfway across the country and go, you know what? Mount Rushmore and the Badlands are pretty nice. Let's spend some time here. We're not going to get to Wally World in California. So that's a really good way to process it in your head, of sort of understanding what I think is the goal. It's like, you got to have some imagination of where you want this to end up.
100%. So if you do the business planning, marketing, I guess consulting 101, an exercise called a SWOT analysis. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If you figure out those 4 categories, you can pretty much, as a consultant, that's money. Like, exactly how you can help them, at least from the stuff that they've surfaced. If you do that with the management, they're not going to tell you everything the employees are thinking or the associates are thinking. If you do it for both of those groups, then they're not going to tell you what the clients are thinking, and then you're not going to know what the prospects are thinking. So the more information you can dump into that type of thing, the more you can help them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes they're smart people, and they'll tell you the answer. They just need someone to hold them accountable. You have a gym located pretty close to here. Some people need the trainer. Like, they won't go to the gym if they don't have somebody holding them accountable. I do that sometimes, but more often than not, I hope I don't have to do that. I hope that I can just give them the ideas, teach them everything I know, and then they're off to the races and can be more successful.
Great show for you. If you're a golfer and you do what you do, stick. You seen that yet?
No, not yet.
On Apple TV,
Okay.
Owen Wilson, and he's a former washed-up pro golfer, and he had a breakdown on the tour, and now he's bringing in this young prodigy who's 19, sort of a cross between the kid is a Happy Gilmore kind of swing out of his shoes kind of hitter. But it's very touching, it's very emotional, it's very deep.
Yeah.
It's a good show, but I think you'd like it. It'd be something that it sort of talks a little bit about what everything that we talked about, but boils it down, because I think even consulting and coaching and guidance for a company is no different than a coach on a football team or even acting as a parent, is that you're offering suggestions on how they can make changes without coming off like you're being preachy or talking at them. And I think a lot of financial people who think that they know it all also, they want to make more money, they want to do better, be happier.
I think there's a bunch of categories of, like, if you've sat through this long, you might even be a prospect of us either way. But that reality is, like, you kind of have to know that, like, where you have your weaknesses and say, wow, I got to call that person because they can help me get over the hurdle.
Yeah.
If you're not, like we started earlier, if you're not self-aware, you're not going to get anywhere. My way of doing it is, like, I'm all about shared success, right? Like, so if I'm not delivering, I don't want to be the consultant for them. So I always say, if you're hiring a consultant, make sure they're always constantly learning, because where the hockey puck is going, is that Gretzky that said,
skate to where the puck is going to be.
Exactly, right? Not where it is. So the world's, I think, with AI is going to evolve. It's the craziest fast pace. So make sure someone's staying up with that stuff. And then two, like, how would they talk to you? Are they talking down to you, like you said? Or are they your friend where they're too nice? Are they talking about too much fluff? Like, a little bit of that's okay, or are they actually giving you concrete things that you can work on?
And there's great analogies in sports. I think we just used Wayne Gretzky, we talk about Brady, but I remember hearing something about Bill Belichick where I thought it was interesting that he was playing a game that nobody else was playing, in the sense that most of his opponents were playing the clock when it started and when it stopped, and their timeouts were timeouts, where he was playing and actively competing in all those moments leading up to the game and pre-game and post-game. Yeah. Like, it was all part of the competition, and it just wasn't when the clock was running. And most people weren't playing that game, and that's why he was so successful. So when you're talking about AI, there's so much to learn. Even technology before then, 1% of the public has latched onto it and taken advantage of it. So if you can be that 1% and just get ahead of it, you're going to be better than your competition, who, let's face it, if you're a successful financial guy, my downtime is going to be on the golf course, on the islands, on my boat, probably not doing as much hustle as I did when I was 20. And the world is changing drastically, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Invest in youth, maybe. Invest in technology. Invest in future-ready thinkers that can come in and help your operations be future-ready.
I honestly think AI is going to help in so many ways, but it's going to revolutionize all industries, right? So a website firm, a company that's online, you're going to not need the programmers to do the website. You're not going to need the writers. You're not going to need certain things. So now it's, the economies of scale is going to be great for small firms, where it used to only be big firms that took advantage of economies of scale. So they're going to, like, the competitive landscape is going to completely shift in a really fast way.
Well, of course.
Operational efficiencies will skyrocket. So you can be a 10-person firm and compete with a 1,000-person firm.
Yeah, and I'm going to get one more opinion on the top of my head that I would just throw out there, so it doesn't give me a headache later that I've kept trapped in. But I think that the attention to personal detail, which is going away in a lot of respects, if you revisit that, that's going to really respond well to a lot of people. And the best example, remember as a kid, when you go get gas, they would come out and wash your windows, check your oil. They would come out and do almost like a little tune-up on your car to make sure your fluids are all right. Nobody does that at all anymore. And if somebody did do it, it would stick out. You would call 17 people to be, I can't believe they just did this. Can you believe this? This day and age, a guy came out, what am I, in the Back to the Future here? And another aspect, like that company Chewy, that company, the dog company, one of the things that they've done, and you've heard about like their flower program for when an animal passes away,
I
they
have
send
heard, yeah,
flowers and
yeah.
bouquet. And usually when a pet dies in a family, people experience as equal trauma to losing a loved one, and that, like a human being loved one, and that somehow, if you're not a pet person, you don't get it, and you don't get that sympathy, and you can be left hurt. So they send flowers. They don't. Their retention rate is astronomical. So if you're a financial firm and you can accentuate some of the personal touches and use it through AI to know, like, hey, their birthday's coming up, notify me. And then you just go over and bring them a Dunkin' Donuts card. And I was in the neighborhood, I know it's your birthday next week, and you walk up to their house because you're passing it. Put a little note in their door or something like that. Those personal touches are going to be the difference between you getting referrals, having somebody stay with you when they maybe at the very same time are thinking about switching to another firm, and you walked up and gave them a little gift card because you wrote down in your notes, like, they love lattes from Starbucks or something. And that might be something to keep in mind.
There's some AI consultants out there that hate this term, but I love it. Personalization at scale. So you can't go deliver 150 Dunkin' Donuts cards at the same time, right? But if you blast out an e-newsletter and you probably lost your audience because you sent the same thing to every single person, now imagine it's customized to every single one. AI is going to get us there, right? And so then how do you take some of those operational efficiencies that you've saved? Now you have more time. What are people going to do with more time? Because we're all going to get more time. AI is going to do that. Then that, the Ritz type of model or whatever, think of like the best client service that you can get out there. That Dunkin' Donuts type of model, like that's boom. That's where you can go. Like you just got
the criticism of AI is it's only as good as what you prompt it to do. And I think that there's the pendulum is always swinging on those things, where I think that we had virtual reality. We've always been on the cusp of something incredible, but then it can backfire because when people don't understand it, they might run away and then just go back to the basics of what they know. That was a big deal with computers and cell phones for old-time CEOs and salespeople who would only show up with their notebooks and like only do a deal over a coffee and a cigarette somewhere. And so computers and even social media was so impersonal to them. They had to retire because they weren't going to embrace it. And I think that there's going to be a pendulum where people get into that too fast. It's going to scare people away, and you just got to have that balance. Just be authentic. Don't let the AI take away your authenticity.
Well, we're already there, right? So we're looking at the worst version of AI that we've ever seen, right? So it's only going to get better. So I would be like to the audience, anyone like an AI? Or like a chat box? And they'll all be like, no hands are going to go up, right? But we're looking at the worst version of a chat box. Imagine you actually talk to a service rep and it's not a human, and they're giving better answers, and it's like that. Like imagine if you ask something very complicated, and it would take 2 days to get the answer, and they could give it to you in 2 seconds. Like that's crazy.
We're not real. This is AI. So
I would be skinnier if it was AI.
But you're right. This is what's getting scary: is that it exponentially gets that much faster. Where the technology that's already been developed, I remember going to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas 7 years ago, and what I saw there still isn't even out, but it was like I was walking into what Epcot used to be when it first opened up, like, what is this? And that's where now it's just happening so much faster. Things are getting so much more compact, smaller. Things are becoming invisible, wireless stuff. I mean, how do you be awe-inspired over wireless? It's just ghosts and spirits in the air. It's a unique thing. But control what you can control and accept what you can't. And the more you can control by just looking in, educating yourself, becoming familiar. Don't let something that scares you prevent you from doing it. Just like you started out the show saying your comfort zone. That's how a moth becomes a butterfly, right? They get so uncomfortable in that cocoon, they got to break out. Right. And if you crack the cocoon open, the butterfly will die. Right. It has to break out of itself. Mike, thanks. It was fun.
You're the man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right.